Hello. Thank you for taking a look at our Sherburne County Housing Study Overview. My name is Brian Fleming. I am the Executive Director of the Sherburne County Economic Development Authority, and this presentation is being recorded in April 2025 in regards to our housing study received at the end of 2024. So going over what the housing study actually includes, and our housing study can be found on our market studies page of our Sherburne County Economic Development webpage. And at the very end of this presentation, I will provide a link to the economic development page, as well as my contact information if you have any questions or would like to follow up further from this presentation. So today, we will go over the key points from the housing study of all Sherburne County, from key points, demographic analysis, economic trends, housing characteristics, rental housing, senior housing, special needs housing, planned and pending housing developments, housing affordability, housing demand analysis, and then our conclusions and recommendations. And this follows the same format as the actual housing study as well. So diving into our key points first. So this housing study projects into 2030, no further. So looking into 2030, what are our housing needs? The study identifies that we need 5,200 new housing units by 2030 throughout Sherburne County to keep up with our population growth. If you take a look there, of that 5,200, 2,205 units should be of age-restricted senior housing, so 55 plus, and all other housing is a little under 3,000. We are expected to grow population-wise by 10%, and an interesting fact is 62% of our workforce commutes out of the county daily for work. Now, key points continued. You'll see that our young seniors and our older seniors brackets are continuing to grow into those age ranges. So our young seniors are growing by 14% and our older seniors are growing by 34% in 2030. So our demographics are aging up. Now, overall, on the rental side of the house, the overall rental vacancy rate in Sherburne County is 3.1%, which the market equilibrium is about 5%, and this means that there are more rentals, more renters than there are areas that they can rent, and this actually creates more demand than supply. So our median rent throughout the county is a little over $1,000. Now on the single-family home prices, our median resale price for a single-family home has jumped from just under $200,000 in 2015 to $370,000 in 2022. Again, this is that supply and demand equilibrium being out of balance here. So we have more of a demand than we do supply. And when we look at our lots, the areas that we can actually build these different housing options on, countywide, we have less than a 2-year supply, whereas 3 to 5 years is recommended. Now, diving into the actual study here, you'll see that we'll have lots of charts that show all of Sherburne County. We break Sherburne County into different submarkets, and this is important to keep in mind because the analysis goes really at the submarket level. So if we look at the Becker submarket, that's Becker City and Becker Township. Now, an important caveat here is that only the southeast portion of St. Cloud falls into Sherburne County. So when we're talking about the northwest submarket, that is including just the portion of St. Cloud that falls into Sherburne County, which is that lower southeast section of St. Cloud. And then that will also include Haven Township and Palmer Township. A same caveat for Princeton. We only include the part of South Princeton that is in Sherburne County. And the last caveat here is that this housing study was created during 2024, and so now it does not have the update that Baldwin is a city, not a township. So going into these demographic analysis, we see that we are projected to grow countywide by 10% going into 2030. This matches our growth from 2010 to 2020. Taking a look at this map, we can see that we are projected to most grow in the Zimmerman submarket, the Elk River submarket, and along that Highway 10 corridor. And as we had spoke about in the very beginning, we have an aging population. So going into 2030, you can see the 65 and older subpopulations of our demographics growing as they age up into those categories. Now, for employment side of it, our top three sectors of employment are construction, manufacturing, and leisure and hospitality. And this is a good inflow-outflow map, which shows that on a daily basis, if our population of Sherburne County is a little bit over 100,000 people, 41,000 or so commute out of the county for work every day and then come back in at the end of the workday. We have a little under or a little over 15,000 that come in from other counties into Sherburne County to work. And then we have about 10,000 folks that are working somewhere in Sherburne County and living in Sherburne County. So overall, we are an exporter of work, of workers, and then we come back after the work shift is finished. Now, looking at our housing characteristics, this is our existing housing stock. When was it built? We can see that a majority of our housing stock was built 1990s and later. We do definitely have some housing stock that falls into the 1940s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, but overall, we have 1990s and beyond is the majority of our housing stock. Now, looking at our existing housing stock again, the two lines here, the dark blue is our single family homes. And the way the study defines a single family home is literally a house that stands by itself, not connected to anything else. Our housing study defines a multi-family housing as anything that is attached to one another or offers multiple units. So that includes our townhomes, twin homes, duplexes, triplexes, and larger apartment buildings that have multiple units. So looking at this graph here, you can see how broken out into our submarkets, how much percentage of our housing is that single family home, and how much in the red is the multifamily homes there. Now, this one breaks into the average cost of our, or the average value of our homes throughout the county. And you can see the graph really peaks at that 300K to 399K. And that correlates with our median resale value of being 370 throughout the county. And you can take a look at this graph to figure out where each submarket kind of hits into that categories. And again, I realize I'm going fast through these slides. We will have the link to the market studies at the very end, and I'm here for any questions you might have of any of these particular slides. Now, again, looking at the housing characteristics as of quarter two of 2024, the red shows the percentage of homes that are homeowner occupied, and the blue line, the blue percentages of the pie charts represent our rentals in each submarket. And so you can see there's the most amount of rentals per submarket in the Northwest submarket up by Southeast St. Cloud, and then down into Elk River submarket. And the rest are actually a pretty high percentage of homeowner occupied properties. Now, looking into that rental housing further, we see that the number of rental units, and so the definition here is a unit that has 4 or more rental units in it. So our quads all the way up through the big apartment buildings. We had a big boom of construction in the 2020s. And you can kind of see how each decade breaks out for the construction of these types of buildings. Now, again, looking at rental housing, this is the number of rental units in those 4 units or more buildings from quarter two of 2024. And you can see that this map lines up well with the previous map showing that the Northwest submarket and the Elk River submarket have our most amount of rental units currently. Now, switching over to senior housing, this is an important slide because it shows the vast spectrum of what senior housing can mean. On the left-hand side, you go from a fully independent lifestyle to the right-hand side, which is a fully dependent lifestyle, and everything in between. So in the fully independent lifestyle, that's just your regular single family home. It might have a few accessibility things built in, like maybe a step-in shower, maybe less steps going into the building, maybe a single floor plan. And then you get into your townhomes, apartments, and active adults, and maybe the communities that are 55 plus communities that might have a few optional services. And then you get into more intensive services, and then it starts flipping over to assisted living, memory care, and skilled nursing, which is really that highly dependent and often switching over into that rental side of senior housing. Now, looking at senior housing, again, as of Q2 of 2024, these are the number of units that were um, self-classified as being senior housing of some kind. And again, very similar to the rental side of it, you see the most in the Northwest submarket and the most in the Elk River submarket there. And now, looking into the demand, what do we need going into 2030 when we're looking at just senior housing? We can see that the red represents our active adult senior housing. So again, this is our standalone houses. These are our patio homes, our one-level homes, our accessibility homes, even going into our 55 plus communities of our townhomes and condos and that type of thing. We're looking at the red line here indicates that in each submarket we have a significant need for at least 100 to 200 more single family homes that are the active lifestyle for senior housing. Now, the blue lines represent that service enhanced. So really building in those services that our senior population will continue to need. That is the blue area of our need going into 2030. Now, looking at our planned and pending housing developments, again, this goes back to Q2 of 2024. Per each of our submarkets, these were our planned, pending, and under construction, basically permits that were going on in each of our submarkets. And you can see which submarkets at that time had plans that were either just in the planning stage, approved stage, or under construction stage. And now looking into overall at that same period, the Q2 2024, of those planned, pending, and under construction units, this is how it breaks down. Most of it being that single family for sale, some multifamily, some age restricted rentals, and some market rate rentals. Now, looking at housing affordability in general, and this is the classification that the housing study uses for this area. We're looking again back in Q2 of 2024. We are looking at the average value of our single family homes. This is the average value in middle of 2024. You can see that our highest average values are in that northeast submarket, and the lowest average values are in the northwest submarket. And this is an important slide because it shows for Sherburne County that the blue line is the price per square foot for existing homes versus the price per square foot for new construction. And you can see that both lines have progressively gone up over the years. And you will also see that new construction is always higher than our existing housing stock. This basically means that anytime we build new construction, that price per square foot is generally always going to be higher than our existing housing stock. And so becomes important when we're talking about new construction, the cost of new construction versus being able to sell existing housing stock for our different populations. And this is an interesting slide too because it shows different age groups that generally fall into different types of housing. And so if you take a look in the second column for rental housing, really anyone from 18 through 79 might be interested in renting. And some people rent their whole lives. Whereas that first-time home buyer generally falls into the ages of 25 through 39. And then they start to move up into more homes, being a second home time buyer. And then in 55 through 74, really looking at that empty nester and back to downsizing. and then looking into that senior housing. So looking at our population, figuring out the types of needs we have throughout our population. Now, again, this is a demand. So going into 2030, what is our demand for new general single-family homes and multifamily homes? And you'll see that we have quite the demand for the single-family, but we also have a significant demand for new multifamily units throughout the county. You can see that the highest need for both is in that Elk River submarket, but the Big Lake submarket and Zimmerman market are also pretty high too, and so is the Becker submarket. So this is important to look at when looking at where is the most need going into 2030. Now, this is a good slide. I apologize that it gets a bit small at the bottom, but of the 5,200 projected housing units that we need, here's how it breaks down. So looking at our general occupancy, so we need 3,045 new housing units of general occupancy, not age restricted at all. Of that, 2/3 of it should be regular for sale houses. Now, of that, we break down into single family houses and multifamily units. And then only 1/3 should be that rental side. So we do need more of both the single family, multifamily that is regular for sale, and that is rental. And the rental even breaks down further into our need for market rate, affordable, and subsidized. So there's a need all the way through that. Now below is the senior housing. And again, that breaks up into active adult and service enhanced. And we'll take a look at that service enhanced side. That IL stands for independent living. Then AL is assisted living, and MC is memory care. So you can see really from this chart here, these trees, that we really have a wide spectrum of need going into 2030 for our housing availability. Now, overall conclusions and recommendations. We do want to keep working to get new platted lots down, getting closer to that 3 to 5 year mark. So having more platted lots that are ready to go for new construction. We are continuing to build on our private-public partnerships and other incentives to help continue to incentivize and grow our workforce housing. Now, we do have that growing need for the patio homes, one-level homes, and accessible homes, especially for our 55 plus community. And we still have that strong need on the rental side, both for market rate and affordable and subsidized housing. And again, that senior housing is a continued strong need throughout the county. So this is really a brief overview of the housing study. I'd be happy to dive into it deeper with you and figure out where we can collaborate and figure out ways to help the housing situation throughout Sherburne County and gear us best going into 2030. My contact information is on the slide there, and it looks like my video might be covering up the end of the URL address, but really, if you type into your favorite search engine, Sherburne County Economic Development, and you go to our county page, you'll see basically this format here, giving our information about Sherburne County Economic Development and the Economic Development Authority, my contact information, and I do look forward to meeting with you and collaborating about this further and answering any questions you might have. Thank you for attending today's webinar.